Someone just got shot in the parking lot of the Gables Park 17 in P1.
Okay, did you see someone that was shot?
All I heard was screaming and then a loud pop, and then I saw her laying on the floor, and there was like blood coming out of her neck. The people, they had a mask on, and I think it was a black Jeep Cherokee, and her phone's on the floor, her car door is open. I don't know what happened.
Kendra Hatcher was 35 years old, and by almost any measure, she had built the kind of life most people only hope for. She was a successful pediatric dentist in Dallas, well-liked, respected, good at what she did. But she hadn't started out with much. She came from a modest background, and she'd watched her mother work and sacrifice to provide for her family. That left a mark on her. The need to give back, to look after other people, wasn't something Kendra picked up as an adult. It had been there since she was a little girl. Her mother would later say she was just an amazing kid, the sort who'd give you the shirt off her back without a second thought. She studied Spanish in college, with a minor in biochemistry, and then went on to dental school. And even before she'd finished training, she was already using her skills the way she'd use them for the rest of her life. On her breaks, she flew to Ecuador and gave free dental care to families who could never have afforded it. She gave them her time. She gave them her skill. She asked for nothing back. Her brother said she was simply on a different level. Her work ethic, her devotion to helping people, the way she stayed relentlessly hopeful. You couldn't help but admire it. Faith was a huge part of her life. She was a devoted Christian. And the friends who knew her best described someone who was outspoken and quick-witted, but also calm, warm, easy to be around. The kind of person who put a room at ease just by walking into it. Then, in 2015, she met someone. His name was Ricardo Paniagua. Ricky, to the people who knew him. An assistant professor and dermatologist. And to her friends, it looked like Kendra had finally met the love of her life. The two of them were nearly inseparable. Just a few months in, they were already talking about marriage. She'd met his parents. They were about to leave on a big trip to Mexico together. The way her friends put it, sometimes you just know. And Kendra knew. It was Labor Day weekend, the evening of September the 2nd, 2015. Kendra had worked a full day, a long one, but ordinary. It was her last shift before she and Ricky left on their trip the next morning. The plan for the night was simple. Dinner with Ricky. A quiet evening. Some last-minute packing before an early start. She pulled into the parking area of her building a little after 7:40. It was an upscale complex, one of the most expensive addresses in the city, part of the Dallas skyline. And within seconds of parking, a neighbor heard a scream, and then a sharp popping sound. They ran toward it and found Kendra collapsed on the ground beside her car. The door still open, her phone on the pavement, her scrubs soaked with blood.
Hi, someone just got shot in the parking lot of the Gables Park 17 in P1.
Okay, did you see someone that was shot?
All I heard was screaming and then a loud pop, and then I saw her laying on the floor, and there was like blood coming out of her neck. The people, they had a mask on, and I think it was a black Jeep Cherokee, and her phone's on the floor, her car door is open. I don't know what happened.
She had been shot at close range, in the back of the head. When police arrived, the story in front of them looked simple. Her purse was gone. In a big city, in a parking garage after dark, a robbery was the obvious answer.
First of all, the building is called Gables Park 17. It's one of the most expensive buildings that you can live in Dallas. It's actually part of the skyline. But the parking situation there is completely bogus. There's no guard at the gate. I was actually there a few weeks ago for a birthday party, and you can drive in and piggyback off of cars that are going in So if you live there, Nancy, and I just happen to drive in behind you, the gate goes up, but it doesn't go down like an arm gate would, one car at a time.
The detective assigned to the case was named Eric Barnes. He was close to home when the call came in, and the first thing that struck him was the location. This was a quiet, affluent part of the city, the kind of neighborhood where violent crime was rare enough to make the news. A killing like this one, in a place like this, didn't fit. At the scene, the evidence pointed toward robbery. Kendra's purse was missing. Beside her body, investigators found her phone, a spent shell casing, and a gun magazine. But two things nagged at Barnes almost immediately. The first was the building itself. It was one of the most exclusive addresses in Dallas, and yet the parking garage had no real security at the gate. There was no guard. The gate lifted for residents, but it didn't come down fast enough to stop a second car from slipping in right behind the first. Anyone could get inside if they were patient enough to wait for someone with a key. The second thing was the shell casing and the magazine. They were clean. No fingerprints, no DNA. Whoever had handled them had been careful in a way random muggers usually aren't. Then the detectives pulled the security footage, and the robbery theory fell apart. A witness had mentioned a dark Jeep speeding out of the garage. Working the cameras backward, investigators watched it happen in reverse. The Jeep had entered fast, more than 20 minutes before Kendra got home. It waited. It slipped in behind another resident's car, then swung into a spot almost directly across from Kendra's. And then it sat there. For 20 minutes, it did nothing but wait. When Kendra's white car finally pulled in and passed it, a figure got out of the Jeep. The figure walked toward her car, then broke into a run. The shots were fired just off camera. And then the figure jumped back into the Jeep, and the vehicle was gone within 2 minutes. That changed everything. People don't wait 20 minutes in a parked car to rob a stranger at random. They wait like that for one reason. They were waiting for her specifically. This wasn't a robbery. It was an ambush. A brighter camera on a different floor gave them one more detail. In the driver's seat of that Jeep sat a woman. The first real break came from an unlikely place. After police released images of the Jeep to the media, a man came forward and said the vehicle was his. His name was Jose. He ran an auto shop, and he explained that he'd loaned the Jeep to a friend while he worked on another car for her. He had no idea it had been used in a killing. He just knew he needed to clear his own name. The friend he'd loaned it to was a woman named Brenda Delgado, and the moment the detectives heard that name, the case turned. Because Brenda Delgado wasn't a stranger to this story at all. She was Ricky's ex-girlfriend. Barnes brought her in. She came willingly, more than willingly. She was calm, warm, cooperative.
Like I said, I appreciate you coming down to talk to me.
Yes, sir. Of course. Tell me what I can help with.
Okay. The lady was killed on Wednesday, and I'm the guy that's assigned to the case. Your name came up in the investigation, so I wanted to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah.
Kind of.
How did my name come up?
Okay. I'll explain all of that to you.
Yes, I want to know.
She noticed a faith-based bracelet on the detective's wrist and spoke about her own religion, telling him she felt a connection to him right away. As she waited, she casually reapplied her makeup. He showed her a photograph of Kendra. She said the face meant nothing to her. She said she'd never known the name of Ricky's new girlfriend, had never seen her, wouldn't recognize her. And she had an alibi ready.
I don't have no idea who she is, who she's dating with any, I have no idea. He just comes and said, hey, I'm seeing someone.
Okay.
That's it. But he's very discreet. He never gives any information.
Yeah.
Ever.
On the day of the murder, she said, she'd been at a library studying for a dental exam, and then she'd gone to a Chili's for dinner. She even reached into her wallet and produced a neatly folded receipt to prove it.
Wednesday, I was in Carrollton.
Okay.
And I studied from maybe 12 all the way to about 6.
Okay. Who were you studying with?
Billy, this guy, a classmate.
Okay.
And I go to Chili's.
How did you get to the Chili's?
Billy took me.
All right. You said you had the receipt in your bag?
Yeah, I can show you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get that.
Yeah, of course.
Perhaps they had got it completely wrong, or perhaps it had been put together perfectly.
Everything lined up. Every detail of her day was accounted for, clean and precise and ready. And that was exactly what troubled Barnes. It wasn't that her story had holes. It was that it had none. It was too complete, too rehearsed, as if she'd been preparing to tell it for a long time. Still, a detective's instinct isn't evidence. She had borrowed the Jeep, yes, but she said her friend Crystal had been the one driving it that day, dropping her off and going on her way.
Who gave you a ride?
My friend, Crystal.
Crystal.
Because I didn't have a car.
So did Crystal borrow a vehicle?
Yes. Crystal borrowed a vehicle to take me to the library.
Okay, so where did Crystal borrow one of his cars?
Yes.
What kind of car did she borrow?
It was that.
She gave them Crystal's name. 2 hours later, Crystal was in an interview room down the hall. Crystal Cortez was 23 years old, a young single mother who worked a modest job and was, by every measure, struggling to get by. And from the very first question, her story would not hold still. Her first version was that she'd simply pulled into the garage looking for a parking spot, heard a loud pop, and driven away. But the timeline made that impossible. She'd sat in that garage for nearly half an hour. Nobody looks for parking for 30 minutes and then leaves.
Who else was in the vehicle with you?
Just my son, and he was asleep in the back, honestly.
No. I want to be able to trust you, and I want to be able to believe you.
Her second version was dramatic. A masked man, she said, had jumped into her car and forced her to drive at knife point, while her young son slept in the back seat.
There's a guy running with a mask right in front of me. He stops, he looks dead at me, and I'm just like, horrid. I'm shaking, literally, at this point, because I have my son in the back. The guy gets in my seat, and he puts the gun right here. My son's in the back. My son is in the back. My instinct is, I'm just shocked and nervous as anybody.
That story fell apart as fast as she could tell it. And then, finally, came the truth. Brenda, she said, had paid her $500 plus drugs. Brenda had told her they just needed someone to steal a woman's purse, a woman who lived at that building. All Crystal had to do was drive. She said she didn't ask many questions. She needed the money. She had kids to feed. And the man who got out of the car and pulled the trigger was someone she barely knew. Crystal had no connection to Kendra, no reason to be there at all, except that Brenda had put her there. Brenda, on the other hand, had every reason in the world. It was enough to charge Crystal, but it still wasn't enough to charge the woman who had planned it.
Would you say it's a big coincidence that your ex-boyfriend's girlfriend ends up dead and your friend ends up driving in the same parking lot that this happens at around the same time that it happens in a Jeep that you borrow? Crystal borrows the Jeep. She borrows the Jeep from your friend.
Yes.
The key thing in all this is you, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why. The Jeep, the way Crystal gets the Jeep is through you.
Yeah.
Okay. The young lady that ends up dead, her boyfriend, the relation is you. You to him turn.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal ends up in this parking garage. Your friend's Jeep, your ex-boyfriend's girlfriend. All three of those things point back to you. Because what I'm searching for is the truth. That's why I wear this. I'm searching for truth. I'm not searching for good guy, bad guy. That's not my job. My job is to put out, this is what happened. This is why this happened. And where do we go from here?
Yeah.
That's what my job is. Okay? And I know that sometimes people make mistakes. And I understand especially emotions are involved when it comes to relationships. This isn't rocket science. People will put this together very fast. You want me to explain to you what motive is? Because you may not know the definition of motive. Motive is what drives something. What drives you? Sometimes it's hate. Sometimes it's love. Sometimes it's greed. In this situation, I don't think it was greed. I think it was hate. I think you hated the fact that you weren't good enough. That's the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. You weren't good enough for Ricky. Maybe he didn't like the way you looked.
I didn't.
Maybe something you did got on his nerves. Maybe he didn't want a dental hygienist anymore. Maybe he wanted a dentist. Maybe you just weren't good enough for him. Maybe his standards were a little bit too high for you. But for whatever reason, you weren't good enough for him. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's very hard to swallow. For you to be able to look in the mirror and say, what is it that she has that I don't have?
Prosecutors wouldn't sign a murder warrant on the word of an accomplice and a detective's gut. All the police could legally hold Brenda on were some unpaid parking tickets. She paid them right there, on the spot. And a few hours later, she was gone, across the border, into Mexico, in her father's car. The architect of the whole thing had walked out the front door on a traffic ticket. There was still a third person to find. Crystal had named the one who pulled the trigger, but only by a nickname. Someone she said she barely knew. Phone records told the rest. One number kept appearing again and again in the days around the murder. It belonged to a man named Christopher Love, a small-time drug dealer with a long record. Police found his car in an impound lot, and when a police dog searched it, it found the gun, hidden in a compartment. An officer later called it the find of his career. Love denied everything at first, for hours. He'd never heard of Kendra. He'd never owned a gun. But faced with the weapon from his own car, his story shifted. He admitted he'd been there, but insisted he was only meant to grab the purse and claimed Crystal was the one who'd fired. The cameras said otherwise. The footage was clear about who drove and who walked toward that car. Crystal drove, Christopher shot, and Brenda, the one who never got her hands dirty, had designed all of it.
We did a search warrant on your car, and we found a gun in your car.
As the search for Brenda widened, so did the picture of what she had actually done, and it was far darker than a jealous ex showing up uninvited. After Ricky ended their relationship, Brenda hadn't simply let go. She had kept the keys to his life. She still had his passwords, his email, his cloud account. She'd installed an app on his phone that let her track exactly where he was at any moment. She read his private messages. She saw his travel plans. When Ricky booked those plane tickets to Mexico, Brenda knew. She had screenshots of it all. This wasn't heartbreak. It was surveillance. It was infrastructure, built and maintained over months. And the killing itself hadn't sprung fully formed. It had hardened slowly, in stages. Before Crystal, before Christopher, Brenda had approached other people. She'd asked her own cousin to hurt Kendra with a baseball bat. She'd asked an acquaintance whether he knew anyone who could harm someone. She'd told a roommate she wanted to put Ricky in a coma and be rid of Kendra, floating the idea of a needle, of a beating. Every one of them said no, and this is the part that sits heaviest. None of them said no, and then picked up a phone. None of them warned Kendra. Several people watched this plan take shape, week by week, and stayed silent. Until the woman at the center of it found the two people who finally said yes. There is one more detail from that night, and it deserves to be said plainly, and only once. The evidence suggested that when Kendra was shot, her hands were raised behind her head. She had given up the purse. She had done everything a person is supposed to do to survive a robbery. She was killed anyway, because it was never about the purse. Brenda spent the next 6 months hidden in a city in northern Mexico. The FBI made her only the 9th woman ever placed on its 10 most wanted list and offered a $100,000 reward. Her own family sent her money to help her stay hidden, and in the end, it was that money trail that helped lead investigators to her. Bringing her home was its own long fight. Brenda held dual citizenship, and Mexico refuses to extradite anyone who might face the death penalty. So to get her back, prosecutors had to agree to take death off the table. It created a strange, bitter arithmetic. The person who planned the entire murder became the one person involved in it who could never be executed for it, while the man she hired to pull the trigger still could. When she was finally extradited and stepped off the plane in Dallas, Detective Barnes was there waiting. He had one thing to say to her. He told her he'd promised he was going to get her. And he had.
Developments in a dentist murder mystery. The FBI is searching for this woman, now on America's Most Wanted list.
This morning, after a month-long investigation, Dallas police zeroing in on 33-year-old Brenda Delgado.
Delgado's addition to the list underscores the violent and calculated nature of the crime she's accused of.
FBI's most wanted woman behind bars tonight. Brenda Delgado was taken into custody in Mexico. Authorities call her the mastermind behind a murder-for-hire plot that left a Dallas dentist dead. The arrest coming just 48 hours after investigators made her the 9th woman ever added to their most wanted list.
Tonight, the capture of a fugitive. After 7 months on the run, Brenda Delgado now under arrest in northern Mexico. Police say the suspected hitman, seen on this surveillance camera leaving the scene, was promised drugs in exchange for killing Hatcher. That man and an alleged getaway driver arrested, but Delgado fled shortly after police questioned her.
What is left to do is to bring her to justice and have her answer for this crime that shocked our community.
To make a deal for her extradition, U.S. officials agreed to take the death penalty off the table. Mexico opposes capital punishment, but Delgado can still fight extradition herself and delay a return here to Dallas for months.
The trials followed one after another. Crystal Cortez, the driver, pleaded guilty and agreed to testify. In exchange, she received 35 years. She had become the one witness who could tie the whole thing together. The only person who could put Brenda in the room where the plan was made. And Brenda Delgado, at last, stood trial in the summer of 2019.
First at 6, a love triangle, murder-for-hire plot, an international escape now playing out in a Dallas County courtroom.
This all sounds like a soap opera plotline, but it is a devastating reality for Dr. Kendra Hatcher's friends and family.
Well, it was shocking video and also testimony today. 2 people took the stand to say that Brenda Delgado also tried to hire them to kill Dr. Kendra Hatcher. They say by either poisoning her, shooting her, or beating her to death. None of them, though, went to police. So they say that Brenda Delgado kept searching for a hitman. They say she finally found one, Christopher Love, who was willing to take money and drugs for murder.
One by one, the men and women who had known Brenda took the stand, and much of what investigators had quietly pieced together was now spoken aloud, under oath, by the people who had lived it. Because before she ever found Crystal and Christopher, Brenda had gone to others first. Her own cousin, Moses, testified that she had shown him a baseball bat and asked him to beat Kendra to death. A former roommate, Jennifer, said Brenda had talked openly about putting Ricky in a coma and getting rid of Kendra, offering her drugs, $2,000, and a car to do it. She'd even described how an injection to the back of the neck. Some remembered her talking about poison, some about a gun, some about a beating. What they all had in common was that they had said no, and that not one of them had ever gone to the police.
She just wanted to eliminate Kendra Hatcher or even both of them.
And in return for doing that, what were you supposed to get?
Drugs, $2,000 and a car.
Then Ricky took the stand, and when he was asked to look at Brenda and identify her, he broke down and wept. But the witness the prosecution needed most was Crystal. Because Christopher had refused to cooperate, Crystal became the one person who could pull the whole thing together, the only one who had sat beside Brenda while the plan was made.
I got $500.
And who paid you?
Brenda did. She wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher because she was envious of her.
Is that the Jeep you were driving that day?
Yes.
Is that you and that driver's?
Yes.
What about Ricky's phone? Was there something able to be done with Ricky's phone?
Yes. Brenda had Ricky's iPhone account logged into another iPhone, and she was able to track him that way to see when they bought the plane tickets to Mexico, to San Francisco, and what was going on with the purchase on the house in San Francisco.
So where would you follow Dr. Hatcher?
We would follow her to her job and to the parking garage where she lived on Cedar Springs.
Did you ever go inside that parking garage before September 2nd?
Yes, we did. Me and Brenda did.
And would you be able, how would you get into that parking garage?
We would sit in the visitors parking place first, and then when another vehicle who had a parking pass would come in, we would go in.
And you follow that person right in?
Yes.
As part of her plea deal, she testified against her. She told the jury plainly why Kendra had died. Brenda, she said, had paid her $500, and Brenda had wanted Kendra gone because she was envious of her. Then she walked the courtroom through the months before the murder.
Called Cortez a liar who planned a robbery of Hatcher herself and implicated her friend to avoid a death sentence.
As you get hopelessly caught in one lie, you start telling another one, correct?
Sometimes.
How Brenda had kept Ricky's Apple account logged into a second phone and used it to watch his life unfold in real time. When he and Kendra bought their plane tickets, the plans they were making for a house in California. How she and Brenda had followed Kendra between her office and the parking garage where she lived, on Cedar Springs. How they'd slipped into that garage more than once by tucking in behind residents with parking passes, and how they'd switched between different cars so no one would notice them circling. And she described the options they'd weighed before settling on a gun. Talk of injecting her, of kidnapping her. Brenda's lawyers built their entire defense on turning that testimony around. They called Crystal a liar, someone who had planned a robbery herself and then implicated a friend to escape a death sentence of her own. But one of the jurors would later say that the harder the defense tried to pick Crystal's account apart, the clearer it became that she was telling the truth. She simply was not the mind behind any of it.
The murder trial against Brenda Delgado continues. Jurors saw this police body cam video. It shows the moments after Kendra Hatcher was murdered. And we're also learning more about text messages that Delgado sent to her ex-boyfriend in the days following the killing. CBS's Nicole Jacobs is live outside the Dallas County Courthouse with more on the story. Nicole.
Russ, for the first time, Kendra Hatcher's mother and boyfriend came face to face with the woman accused of orchestrating Hatcher's murder. For this trial, prosecutors are outlining a case of jealousy and obsession against Brenda Delgado. Calling to the stand her cousin and her former best friend, both testifying. Delgado offered them the job first, which they turned down. Prosecutors say she eventually found two people who would carry out the hit and kill Hatcher, who was Delgado's ex-boyfriend's new love interest. In the days following the murder, Delgado brazenly contacted her ex-boyfriend, offering support.
She was offering any assistance, such as providing groceries or other items that we might need.
And day two of testimony.
The jury saw the body camera footage from the night Kendra died, and they saw something else. The text messages Brenda had sent Ricky in the days right after the murder. Messages offering comfort, offering to bring him groceries, anything he needed. Sent by the one person who knew exactly what had been done to the woman he loved. On the third day, Detective Barnes himself took the stand. He said that as he testified, he kept trying to catch Brenda's eye, to let her know that whatever she had managed to slip past everyone else, she had never once slipped it past him. The defense rested without ever putting Brenda on the stand. The jury was gone for 18 minutes, They came back with a conviction for capital murder.
Brenda Delgado, the mastermind in the murder-for-hire plot targeting a Dallas dentist, today convicted of capital murder.
And they believed more than just the facts of the plot. They believed she had felt nothing about it. One juror said the only word that really fit was sociopathic. Because the death penalty had already been surrendered to bring her home from Mexico, Brenda Delgado was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Before she was taken away, the court heard from Kendra's family.
Take comfort in knowing our God has given our Kendra the ultimate spot in heaven, a spot in which you will never see. You, Brenda Delgado, have earned your spot on this earth behind cold steel bars for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life.
Crystal Cortez, the driver, was sentenced to 35 years. She'll first be eligible for parole in 2033. Christopher Love had already stood trial months earlier for pulling the trigger. He was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. As of today, he remains on death row. His appeals have so far failed, and no execution date has been set. And Ricky, the man at the center of all of it, who had lost the woman he was about to build a life with, eventually finished his residency and moved back home to California. He went on practicing dermatology and wrote, in a note about his work, that his goal was simply to care for his patients with empathy, respect, and kindness. A quiet life, chosen after everything. The murder of Kendra Hatcher is a hard reminder of how much damage unchecked jealousy and obsession can do, not only to the person it fixes on, but to everyone in reach of it. Kendra was a woman with a future in front of her, and she lost all of it because she became the target of someone else's resentment. And in choosing to take Kendra's life, Brenda destroyed her own just as completely. She could have walked away and let two people live their lives and lived hers. Instead, 3 people went to prison or to death row, and a family was left with an empty chair. One of Kendra's closest friends put it best. She said she doesn't smile much anymore, that she's pulled away from people she loves, that it reached into her marriage and her sense of herself as a mother. She called it a butterfly effect, one act of cruelty rippling outward into thousands of lives, most of whom never sat in that courtroom at all. There are a few things worth carrying out of a story like this one. That obsession is not love, and that it rarely announces itself. It begins quietly. A password kept, a location watched, a message read, and it can harden into something monstrous when no one around it says the word out loud. That when someone tells you they want to hurt another person, it deserves to be taken seriously. Several people heard exactly what Brenda intended and stayed silent. A single phone call from any one of them might have changed everything. That when a relationship ends, closing the digital doors, the shared passwords, the old keys, the tracking apps, isn't paranoia. It's safety. And that a calm, familiar face proves nothing. Brenda was composed, devout, and armed with a perfect alibi, and it very nearly worked. The case was solved because the people investigating it trusted the evidence over the performance. Justice came in the end, but it was never complete. No sentence gives back what was taken, and the woman who planned it will never face what her hired gun faces. What's left is a family that was robbed of years they should have had. The celebrations, the ordinary afternoons, all of it. Kendra Hatcher had worked her whole life for the one she'd finally built. She was a compassionate, generous person, one day away from a trip she'd never take, at the happiest she had ever been. That's who she was, and that's who deserves the last word, not the person who took her. Her name was Kendra Hatcher,